His name was Daniel Crawford, and at 32 years old, he had everything most people dreamed of having. He was the founder and CEO of a tech startup that had exploded into success, making him worth somewhere around $200 million. He owned a penthouse in downtown Seattle, drove a collection of luxury cars, and traveled the world whenever he felt like it. But despite all that wealth and success, Daniel felt profoundly lonely. The problem wasn't finding women who wanted to date him. The problem was finding women who wanted to date him for the right reasons. Every relationship he had been in for the past 5 years had ended the same way. He would meet someone at a networking event or through mutual friends. They would seem interested and genuine, and then he would discover they were more interested in his bank account than in him as a person. His last girlfriend, a woman named Clarissa who worked in marketing, had seemed perfect for 6 months. She was beautiful and intelligent, and they had interesting conversations about business and travel. But then Daniel had discovered she was taking screenshots of his credit card statements and discussing his net worth with her friends. When he confronted her, she had actually seemed confused about why he was upset. "Isn't that the point of dating someone successful?" she had asked, "to benefit from their success?" That relationship had ended 2 months ago, and Daniel had decided he needed a different approach. He was tired of being valued for his money rather than for who he was. He wanted someone who would like him for himself, someone genuine and real, someone who would care about him even if he had nothing. That's when he came up with his plan. It was unconventional and maybe a little crazy, but Daniel was desperate enough to try it. He would create a completely different identity, someone with no wealth or status, and see if he could find a woman who would like that version of him. If she could care about him when she thought he had nothing, then maybe, just maybe, she would be someone worth building a real relationship with. Daniel registered as an Uber driver under a different name, using a burner phone and a separate email address. He bought an old Honda Civic, nothing fancy, just a reliable used car that looked like it belonged to someone working a regular job to make ends meet. He got some regular clothes from Target, simple jeans and plain shirts, nothing designer or expensive looking. He even practiced changing his demeanor, being more casual, less polished, more like a regular guy just trying to get by. His friends thought he was crazy when he told them his plan. "You're going to pretend to be an Uber driver to meet women?" his best friend Marcus had said with disbelief. "That's the most elaborate catfishing scheme I've ever heard." "It's not catfishing," Daniel had protested. "I'm still me, just without the money on display. I'm just removing the variable that's been corrupting every relationship I've had. I want someone to know me before they know my net worth." Marcus had shaken his head, but wished him luck. "Just don't get hurt, man, and maybe don't do this for too long. It's kinda weird." Daniel started driving for Uber on weekends, taking rides around the city, getting used to his new persona. He introduced himself as Danny, told people he was working multiple jobs to save money, kept his background vague and humble. Most passengers barely talked to him beyond basic pleasantries, which was fine. He wasn't looking for connections with random passengers. He was looking for something specific, though he wasn't entirely sure what. Then one Friday evening, he got a ride request from someone named Sarah. The pickup location was a small apartment building in a modest neighborhood, and when she came out, Daniel felt something shift inside him. She was pretty in a natural way, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, minimal makeup, wearing jeans and a sweater. She smiled genuinely when she got in the car, immediately friendly in a way that felt unforced. "Hi," she said brightly. "Thanks for picking me up. I'm Sarah." "Hey, Sarah, I'm Danny," he replied, pulling away from the curb. "Where are we headed tonight?" "Just to the downtown library," she said. "I know it's Friday night, and that's probably a weird destination, but I volunteer there on Friday evenings. We do a reading program for kids."
"That's not weird at all," Daniel said, genuinely impressed. "That's really cool, actually. How long have you been doing that?" "About 2 years now," Sarah said, and he could hear the warmth in her voice when she talked about it. "I'm a teacher during the week, elementary school, so I love working with kids. The library program reaches children whose families might not read to them much at home. It's really rewarding." They talked for the 15-minute drive to the library, and Daniel found himself completely engaged in the conversation.
Sarah was easy to talk to, genuinely passionate about her work, and seemed to have a positive outlook that was refreshing. She asked him about himself, and he stuck to his prepared story about working multiple jobs, trying to save money, figuring out his next steps. "That must be hard," Sarah said sympathetically. "Working so much. Do you get any time for yourself?" "Not as much as I'd like," Daniel admitted, which was actually true even in his real life. "But I'm working towards something better, trying to build a future, you know?" "I respect that," Sarah said. "A lot of people just complain about their situation but don't actually work to change it. The fact that you're putting in the effort says a lot about your character." When they arrived at the library, Sarah paid through the app and added a generous tip. Before she got out, she turned to him with a smile. "Thanks for the ride, Danny, and thanks for the conversation. You made my evening a little brighter." "You too," Daniel said, meaning it. "Good luck with the reading program." She got out and walked toward the library entrance, and Daniel sat there for a moment, watching her go. There was something about her that felt different, something genuine and warm that he hadn't encountered in a long time. On impulse, he made a decision that was probably unprofessional but felt necessary. He waited in the parking lot. An hour and a half later, when Sarah came out of the library, Daniel was still there. She looked surprised when she saw his car, and he rolled down the window. "Hey," he called out, "I know this is weird, but I was in the area and thought maybe you could use a ride home. No charge, just as a friend." Sarah looked uncertain for a moment, and Daniel worried he had overstepped. But then she smiled. "That's really kind of you, but are you sure? Don't you need to work?" "I can take a break," he said. "Come on, let me give you a ride. It's late, and this neighborhood isn't the best." Sarah got in the car, and they drove back toward her apartment building. They talked more during this ride, the conversation flowing even more easily than before. Sarah told him about the kids she worked with, about the challenges and joys of teaching, about her modest life and her big dreams. Daniel found himself being more honest than he had planned, talking about his own struggles with purpose and meaning, though he kept the details vague. When they pulled up to her building, Sarah turned to him. "Thanks again, Danny. You didn't have to wait for me, but I really appreciate it. It was nice having someone to talk to." "I enjoyed it too," Daniel said. And then, taking a risk, he added, "I know this might be forward, but would you maybe want to get coffee sometime? Just as friends, I mean. I don't meet many people I can actually talk to like this." Sarah's smile widened. "I'd like that. Let me give you my number." They exchanged numbers, and Sarah got out of the car, waving as she walked to her building. Daniel drove away feeling lighter than he had in months. He had just met someone who seemed genuinely kind and interesting, someone who had treated him with respect and friendliness, even though she thought he was just a struggling Uber driver. This was exactly what he had hoped to find. They texted over the next few days, casual messages that gradually became longer conversations. Sarah was funny and thoughtful, sharing stories about her students and asking about his day. Daniel found himself looking forward to her messages more than anything else, more than his business meetings or investor calls. There was something pure about their connection, something uncomplicated by expectations or calculations. A week after their first meeting, they went for coffee. Daniel made sure to choose a modest coffee shop, nothing fancy, and he drove his Honda Civic. He wore his regular clothes, his Target jeans and a plain shirt.
He was Danny, the Uber driver, not Daniel, the millionaire CEO, and he needed to maintain that persona. Sarah was already there when he arrived, sitting at a small table by the window with 2 coffees. "I hope you don't mind," she said as he sat down. "I got here early and figured I'd order. I got you a regular coffee, since I wasn't sure what you liked." "This is perfect," Daniel said, touched by the small gesture. "Thank you." They talked for 2 hours, the conversation ranging from childhood memories to current dreams, from favorite books to opinions on everything from education policy to the best pizza toppings. Daniel was careful to keep his stories consistent with his fake persona, but he found that most of what he shared was actually true. His feelings, his thoughts, his sense of humor, his values, all of that was genuine. He was just leaving out the part about having millions of dollars in the bank. Sarah talked about growing up in a working-class family, about her parents who had worked hard to support her education, about her student loans that she was still paying off.
She talked about her small apartment and her old car, about budgeting carefully and saving for occasional treats. She was honest about her financial limitations, but never seemed bitter or resentful. She seemed grateful for what she had and optimistic about the future. "I know I'm not rich or anything," she said at one point, stirring her coffee thoughtfully, "but I have a job I love, a place to live, good health, and great friends. I feel pretty lucky, actually. Money would be nice, sure, but I think happiness is more about how you choose to see your life rather than how much you have in your bank account." Daniel felt a pang of guilt at her words. Here she was, being completely honest about her modest circumstances, while he was lying about his own. But he pushed the guilt aside, telling himself this was necessary. He needed to know that she could care about him without the money, and so far, she seemed to be proving exactly that. They started seeing each other regularly, meeting for coffee or walks in the park, going to free concerts or art exhibits. Daniel was always careful to suggest inexpensive activities, things that Danny the Uber driver could afford. Sarah never seemed to mind or expect anything more elaborate. She seemed happy just to spend time with him, to talk and laugh and share moments together. One evening, about 3 weeks into their friendship, they were walking through a neighborhood street fair, looking at craft booths and listening to local musicians. Sarah had brought homemade cookies to share, and they sat on a bench eating them and watching the crowds. "These are amazing," Daniel said, genuinely impressed by the cookies. "Where did you learn to bake like this?" "My mom taught me," Sarah said with a smile. "When I was growing up, we couldn't afford to buy a lot of treats, so my mom would bake things instead. It was cheaper, and she made it fun, like we were creating something special together. I still love baking. It makes me feel connected to her, and it's a way to show people I care without spending a lot of money." Daniel felt that pang of guilt again, sharper this time. Sarah was so thoughtful and genuine, finding ways to show care and build connection without relying on money. Meanwhile, he had money, but had been using it as a shield, letting it define his relationships. And now he was lying to this wonderful woman about who he really was. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked, noticing his expression. "You look sad." "I'm fine," Daniel said quickly. "Just thinking about my own family, I guess. Your relationship with your mom sounds really special." "It is," Sarah said. "She worked so hard for us, and she never complained. She taught me that what matters isn't what you have, but who you are and how you treat people. I try to live by that." As their friendship deepened, Daniel found himself falling for Sarah in a way he had never experienced before. It wasn't just physical attraction, though he definitely found her beautiful. It was deeper than that. He admired her kindness, her optimism, her genuine care for others. He loved how she found joy in simple things, how she was thoughtful and creative in showing affection, how she treated everyone with respect, regardless of their status or circumstances. But he also felt increasingly guilty about his deception. Every time Sarah talked about her struggles with money, every time she suggested a free activity because she assumed he was also on a tight budget, every time she was understanding about him not being able to afford something, Daniel felt like he was betraying her trust. He was getting to see her genuine character, but she wasn't getting the same opportunity with him. She was falling for Danny, the struggling Uber driver, not Daniel, the wealthy CEO. 1 month after they met, Sarah invited him to her apartment for dinner. "It's nothing fancy," she warned him over text, "just spaghetti and salad, but I'd love to cook for you if you're interested." Daniel accepted immediately, both excited and nervous. This felt like a significant step forward in their relationship. He showed up at her apartment with a bottle of wine, nothing expensive, but something decent, and Sarah welcomed him with a warm hug. Her apartment was tiny, a studio with a Murphy bed and a kitchenette barely big enough for one person. But she had made it cozy with plants and books, photos of family and friends on the walls, colorful pillows and throws. It was clean and welcoming, and it clearly reflected her personality. "Welcome to my palace," she said with a self-deprecating laugh. "I know it's small, but it's mine, and I love it." "It's great," Daniel said honestly. "It feels like you. It's warm and inviting." They cooked together in the cramped kitchen, bumping into each other and laughing, working as a team to prepare the meal. Sarah had made the sauce from scratch, and the apartment filled with the delicious smell of garlic and tomatoes and herbs. They ate at her small table, drinking wine and talking, and Daniel felt more at home than he ever had in his expensive penthouse. After dinner, they sat on her couch, close together, and Sarah put on music from her phone. They talked about everything and nothing, and at some point, Daniel found himself holding her hand, their fingers intertwined, feeling perfectly content. "I really like you, Danny," Sarah said quietly. "I hope that's not too forward to say, but you're different from anyone I've ever met. You're kind and thoughtful, and you actually listen when I talk. You don't try to impress me or pretend to be something you're not. You're just you, and I really appreciate that." Daniel's heart clenched at her words. The irony was devastating. She was praising him for not pretending to be something he wasn't, when that was exactly what he was doing. She thought she was seeing the real him, but she was seeing a carefully constructed fiction. "I really like you too," he said, and that part was completely true. "You're one of the most genuine people I've ever met." They kissed that night, and it was sweet and tender and filled with promise. When Daniel finally left Sarah's apartment around midnight, walking to his old Honda Civic parked on the street, he felt like he was living in 2 different worlds. There was the world where he was Danny, a struggling guy with limited means who had found a genuine connection with an amazing woman. And there was the real world, where he was Daniel, a millionaire CEO who was lying to that woman about his entire life. He knew he needed to tell her the truth. The longer he waited, the worse the betrayal would be when she inevitably found out. But he was terrified of losing her, terrified that once she knew he was wealthy, everything would change. Either she would be angry about the deception and leave, or she would start treating him differently, seeing him through the lens of his money, rather than seeing him for who he really was. Daniel's anxiety about the situation grew over the next week. He and Sarah continued to see each other, their relationship becoming more serious and intimate. They were officially dating now, calling each other boyfriend and girlfriend, making plans for the future. But every moment of happiness was tinged with Daniel's guilt about the lie he was living. His friend Marcus confronted him about it one evening. "You need to tell her, man," Marcus said firmly. "This has gone on long enough." "You've proven your point. She likes you for you, not for your money. Now you need to be honest with her before this gets even more complicated." "I know," Daniel admitted. "I'm just scared. What if she can't forgive me for lying? What if everything changes once she knows?" "It probably will change," Marcus said honestly, "but continuing to lie is only going to make it worse. The longer you wait, the bigger the betrayal. You need to rip off the Band-Aid and deal with the consequences." Daniel knew Marcus was right. He decided he would tell Sarah the truth that weekend. He would take her somewhere private, explain everything, and hope that she could understand why he had done what he did. He practiced what he would say, trying to find words that would convey both his remorse for lying and his genuine feelings for her. But before he could have that conversation, everything fell apart in the worst possible way. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Daniel had agreed to actually work as an Uber driver for a few hours. He felt like he needed to maintain the illusion. And besides, he had been matching Sarah's schedule of working multiple jobs by actually driving occasionally. He was picking up passengers downtown when he got a request from a familiar name. His heart sank when he saw it was Clarissa, his ex-girlfriend. He considered canceling the ride, but that would look suspicious. He picked her up outside a high-end shopping center, and her eyes widened when she recognized him. "Daniel?" she said with shock and confusion, getting into the back seat. "What are you doing driving an Uber? Is this some kind of joke?" Daniel's mind raced. He could explain, but what would he even say? "Hi, Clarissa, it's not what it looks like. I'm just pretending to be poor to test women I date?" That sounded insane, even in his own head. "Just trying something different," he said vaguely. "Where are you headed?" Clarissa gave him an address, but she spent the entire ride peppering him with questions. Was his business failing? Had he lost all his money? Why was he driving an Uber? What was going on? Daniel deflected as best he could, giving non-answers and trying to change the subject. But Clarissa was persistent and increasingly confused. When they arrived at her destination, she got out but stood by the car door. "This is really weird, Daniel," she said. "I'm going to call Marcus and find out what's actually happening with you." Something is clearly going on. After she left, Daniel sat in his car with his heart pounding. This was bad. Clarissa would definitely call Marcus, and Marcus would probably tell her about the whole situation. And then, who knew what Clarissa would do with that information? She wasn't exactly known for her discretion. His fears were confirmed an hour later when Marcus called. "Dude, Clarissa just called me," Marcus said urgently. "She saw you driving Uber and she's freaking out. I didn't tell her about your plan, but she's determined to figure out what's going on. I think you need to tell Sarah, like, immediately, before Clarissa figures it out and causes problems." Daniel knew Marcus was right. He texted Sarah immediately. "Hey, can we meet tonight? There's something important I need to talk to you about." Sarah responded quickly. "Of course. Is everything okay? You're worrying me." "We just need to talk," Daniel wrote back. "Can I come to your place around 7? The hours until 7 felt like the longest of Daniel's life. He went home to his real home, his penthouse, and paced around trying to figure out exactly how to explain everything. How did you tell someone you had been lying to them for over a month about your entire identity? How did you make them understand that the lie came from genuine pain and a desire to find something real, not from malice or manipulation? When he arrived at Sarah's apartment that evening, she opened the door with a concerned expression. "You're scaring me, Danny. What's wrong?" "Can we sit down?" Daniel asked. "This is going to take a while to explain." They sat on her couch, and Daniel took a deep breath. "There's something I need to tell you, and you're probably going to be very angry with me. I've been lying to you about who I am." Sarah's expression shifted from concern to confusion. "What do you mean?" "My name isn't Danny," Daniel said. "It's Daniel, Daniel Crawford. And I'm not a struggling Uber driver working multiple jobs. I'm actually the CEO of a tech company. I'm wealthy, very wealthy.
The Uber thing was something I started doing to meet people who would like me, not for my money. I've had too many relationships ruined by gold diggers, and I wanted to find someone genuine. So I created this fake persona to test whether someone could care about me without knowing about my wealth. Sarah stared at him, her face going pale.
You've been pretending to be poor this whole time? Everything you told me about your life was a lie? Not everything, Daniel said desperately. My feelings for you are real. The conversations we've had, the connection between us, that's all real. I just lied about my financial situation and my job. Everything else was honest. Everything else? Sarah's voice was rising now. Danny, Daniel, whoever you are, you lied about your entire identity. You let me believe you were someone you're not. You let me talk about my financial struggles, let me suggest cheap dates because I thought you couldn't afford anything else. Let me feel like we were on equal footing, when the whole time you were testing me like some kind of experiment? It wasn't like that, Daniel protested. I mean, yes, I wanted to see if you would like me without money, but it wasn't cold or calculated. I genuinely liked you from the moment we met. You're amazing, Sarah. You're exactly the kind of person I've been hoping to find. By lying to me? Sarah stood up, her eyes filled with tears. By making me fall for someone who doesn't even exist? Who does that, Daniel? Who lies to someone for over a month? Who gets them to open up and be vulnerable? Who pretends to be their equal when they're actually secretly rich and judging them the whole time? I wasn't judging you, Daniel said, standing up too. I was falling in love with you. Everything I said about how I feel, that was all true. How am I supposed to believe anything you say now? Sarah asked, and tears were flowing freely down her cheeks. You've proven you're capable of lying to my face for weeks. You've proven that you don't trust me, that you see me as some kind of test subject rather than a real person with real feelings. How do I know anything about you is true? Daniel felt his own tears starting. Because I'm telling you now, I'm coming clean, because I can't stand lying to you anymore. I was going to tell you anyway. I was planning this conversation. But then something happened today that made me realize I needed to do it immediately. What happened? Sarah asked. I ran into my ex, and she saw me driving Uber, and she's probably going to figure out what I've been doing, Daniel explained. I didn't want you to find out from someone else. I wanted to tell you myself and try to explain. Oh, perfect, Sarah said bitterly. So you're only telling me because you got caught, not because you actually felt guilty. That makes me feel so much better. That's not true, Daniel insisted. I felt guilty this entire time. Every time you were thoughtful or kind or genuine with me, I felt terrible for deceiving you. But I was also falling for you more deeply, and I was scared of losing you. Well, congratulations, Sarah said coldly. You've lost me. I can't be with someone who would do this. I can't trust you. You've shown me exactly who you are, and it's someone who lies and manipulates to get what they want, regardless of how it affects other people. Sarah, please. Daniel reached for her hand, but she pulled away. I need you to leave, she said quietly. Right now. I need you to get out of my apartment and leave me alone. Can we please talk about this? Daniel begged. Can I at least try to make you understand? There's nothing to understand, Sarah said. You lied to me. You made me fall for someone who doesn't exist. And now you want me to just forgive you and move on like it's no big deal? I'm not that person, Daniel. I value honesty above almost everything else. My ex-boyfriend lied to me constantly about small things and big things, and I swore I would never be with someone like that again. And here you are, having lied about your entire identity? There's no coming back from that. Daniel wanted to argue, wanted to make her see his perspective, wanted to fix this somehow. But he could see from her expression that nothing he said would make a difference right now. She was hurt and angry, and she had every right to be. He had betrayed her trust fundamentally, and there was no easy way to repair that. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I know that doesn't mean much right now, but I am truly, deeply sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted to find something real." "You wanted something real by being fake?" Sarah said. "Think about that, Daniel. Really think about the logic there." She walked to her door and opened it, a clear signal for him to leave. Daniel walked out slowly, hoping she would call him back, hoping for some sign that forgiveness might be possible. But she just closed the door quietly behind him, and he heard the lock click. Daniel sat in his car, his real car, his Mercedes that he had parked a few blocks away and walked from, and he put his head in his hands. He had found exactly what he was looking for in Sarah. She was genuine and kind, completely uninterested in wealth or status, someone who valued character over material things. She had proven beyond any doubt that she liked him for who he was, not what he had, and he had destroyed it all by lying to her. The very thing he had been trying to avoid, having money ruin a relationship, had happened anyway, just in a different way. His wealth hadn't attracted her and then corrupted things. Instead, his fear of his wealth's impact had led him to deception, and that deception had destroyed their connection. Over the next few days, Daniel tried to reach out to Sarah multiple times. He texted and called, sent flowers with apology notes, even showed up at her apartment building once, though he left when she wouldn't buzz him in. Every message he sent was met with silence. Sarah had blocked his number, deleted him from social media, effectively removed him from her life. Marcus tried to be supportive, but even he was struggling with what had happened. "I get why you did it, man," Marcus said when they met for drinks. "I understand the fear that drove you to create this fake persona, but you took it too far. You should have told her after the first date, or the second at the latest. Once you knew she was genuine, you should have come clean. Letting it go on for over a month, letting her fall for you while living a lie, that was wrong. You have to see that." "I do see it," Daniel admitted miserably. "I see it so clearly now. I was just so scared of losing her that I kept putting off the truth. And now I've lost her anyway, in the worst possible way." His assistant at work noticed his distraction and declining mood. "Is everything okay?" she asked gently after he zoned out during an important meeting. "You haven't seemed like yourself lately." "Just personal stuff," Daniel said vaguely. "Relationship problems." The woman he loved, the woman who had been perfect in every way that mattered, was gone from his life, and it was entirely his own fault. He had learned an important lesson, but the cost of that lesson was devastating. 2 weeks after their breakup, Daniel received an unexpected letter in the mail at his penthouse. He recognized Sarah's handwriting on the envelope, and his heart started racing. He opened it carefully, almost afraid to read what was inside. "Daniel," the letter began, "I'm writing this because I need closure, and I think maybe you need to hear some things too. I've spent the last 2 weeks angry and hurt and confused. I've cried a lot, talked to my friends and family, tried to understand how someone I trusted could deceive me so completely. And I've come to some conclusions that I want to share with you. First, what you did was wrong. There's no gray area there. Lying about your entire identity to test someone is manipulative and unfair. You took away my ability to make informed choices about our relationship. You put yourself in a position of power where you knew everything about me, but I knew nothing true about you. That's not how healthy relationships work, and it's not something I can just forgive and forget. Second, I understand why you did it. That doesn't make it okay, but I understand the pain that drove you to such an extreme measure. You've been hurt by people who only valued you for your money, and you wanted to protect yourself from that happening again. I get that. But here's what you need to understand. You can't build a genuine relationship on a foundation of lies, no matter how good your intentions are. Trust is everything, and you destroyed that before we ever really had a chance. Third, and this is the part I've struggled with the most, I believe that your feelings for me were real. I could see it in your eyes, feel it in how you treated me. The connection we had was genuine, even if the circumstances were false. And that makes this hurt even more, because we could have had something beautiful, something real, if only you had been honest from the beginning. If you had approached me as yourself, as Daniel, the wealthy CEO, I still would have liked you. Maybe it would have taken me longer to trust that you weren't just another rich guy looking for a trophy girlfriend, but I would have given you that chance. Because at the end of the day, I care about who people are, not what they have. You didn't need to pretend to be poor to win my affection. You just needed to be honest and let me see the real you. Your fear prevented you from taking that risk, and now we've both lost something that could have been special. I don't know if you'll learn from this experience or if you'll just repeat the same pattern with someone else, but I hope you'll realize that the solution to being valued for your money isn't to lie about it. The solution is to be patient and discerning, to take time to get to know people, to look for genuine character rather than rushing into relationships. There are good people out there who will value you for who you are, but you have to give them the chance to prove that. You have to trust them, even though trust is scary. I wish things had been different between us. I wish you had been brave enough to be honest. I wish I was the kind of person who could forgive this and move forward, but I'm not. The breach of trust is too fundamental. I need to be with someone who respects me enough to be truthful from the start, even when the truth is complicated or scary. I hope you find what you're looking for, Daniel. I hope you find someone who loves you for all the right reasons, and I hope when you find that person, you'll have the courage to be honest with them. You deserve happiness, and so do I. Just not with each other. Take care of yourself, Sarah. Daniel read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down his face. Sarah's words were painful but fair, insightful but firm. She understood him, forgave him in a way, but still wouldn't take him back. And she was right not to. He had violated her trust too completely to come back from it. But her letter also gave him something valuable: clarity. She had helped him understand not just what he had done wrong, but how to do better in the future. If he ever wanted a genuine relationship, he would have to be brave enough to be vulnerable, to trust someone with his whole truth from the beginning, to accept the risk that came with that openness. Over the next few months, Daniel withdrew from dating entirely and focused on himself. He went to therapy to work through his issues around trust and his complicated relationship with his wealth. He volunteered at a youth center, teaching kids about technology and entrepreneurship, finding fulfillment in giving back rather than just accumulating more money. He spent time with his family and old friends, nurturing relationships that weren't based on his net worth. He also shut down his Uber account and sold the Honda Civic. That chapter of his life was over. He had learned what he needed to learn, even if the lesson had come at a terrible cost. He didn't need to pretend to be poor to find genuine people. He needed to be brave enough to be his authentic self and patient enough to wait for the right person. 6 months after his breakup with Sarah, Daniel was at a charity event for education nonprofits. He had donated a significant amount of money and was attending to present the check.
As he was talking to the organizers, he saw a familiar figure across the room. It was Sarah, attending as a representative from her school. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. Then, Sarah gave him a small, sad smile and a nod of acknowledgement before turning back to her conversation. Daniel's heart ached at the sight of her, at how beautiful and genuine she looked, at the reminder of everything he had lost. He approached her later in the evening when she was standing alone looking at the silent auction items. "Hey," he said softly. "Hi, Daniel," she replied, her voice carefully neutral. "I heard you donated a lot of money to this cause. That's really generous of you." "It's important work," he said. "Education, helping kids, that matters. Someone special taught me that." Sarah's expression softened slightly. "How have you been?" she asked. "Learning, growing, trying to be better," Daniel said honestly. "I went to therapy. I've been working through my issues around money and trust. I volunteered at a youth center, teaching kids about technology. I've been trying to become the kind of person who deserves someone as genuine as you." "That's good," Sarah said quietly. "I'm glad you're working on yourself." "How about you?" Daniel asked. "How have you been?" "I'm okay," Sarah said. "It took me a while to get past the hurt and anger, but I've moved on. I'm actually seeing someone now. He's a teacher at my school. He's kind and honest, and we're taking things slow. It's good." Daniel felt a stab of pain at her words, but he forced a smile. "I'm happy for you. You deserve someone good." "You do too, Daniel," Sarah said, and there was genuine warmth in her voice now. "I hope you find that person. I hope you've learned enough to let them in when you do." "I have," Daniel assured her. "Because of you, because of what you taught me, I understand now what matters. I won't make the same mistakes again." They stood there in awkward silence for a moment, and then Sarah reached out and briefly touched his hand. "I don't regret meeting you," she said. "Even with how things ended, I don't regret it. You were important to me, and what we had, even if it was built on a lie, helped me understand what I'm looking for in a relationship. So, in a weird way, thank you." "Thank you too," Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. "For giving me a chance, even the chance I didn't deserve. For being exactly who you are. For teaching me what genuine connection looks like. For writing me that letter and helping me understand what I need to change. You changed my life, Sarah, even if we can't be in each other's lives anymore." Sarah squeezed his hand once more and then let go. "Take care of yourself, Daniel. Be honest. Be brave. Find someone who's worth your truth. You too, Sarah. Though it sounds like you already have." She smiled sadly and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Daniel stood there watching her go, feeling the full weight of what he had lost, but also feeling grateful for what she had given him. She had shown him what he was looking for, even if he hadn't been ready to receive it properly. She had taught him about genuine character and authentic connection, and she had given him the gift of honest feedback, helping him understand how to do better. Daniel stayed at the event for another hour, mingling and talking about education initiatives, but his mind was on Sarah the whole time. She had moved on, was happy with someone else, and while that hurt, it also felt right. She deserved happiness with someone who had been honest with her from the start, someone who valued her enough to be vulnerable and real. A year after his disastrous experiment with pretending to be a poor Uber driver, Daniel met someone new. Her name was Jennifer, and she was an attorney who worked on nonprofit cases. They met at a conference about social entrepreneurship, where they were both speaking on different panels. Jennifer knew exactly who he was from the beginning, knew about his wealth and his company, and she was interested in him anyway, but in a way that felt healthy and balanced. Their relationship developed slowly, built on honesty and mutual respect. Daniel told her about Sarah early on, about his past mistakes and what he had learned from them. Jennifer appreciated his openness and shared her own past relationship struggles. They built trust gradually, taking time to really know each other, being transparent about their lives and their feelings. It wasn't perfect or fairy tale romantic. It was real and sometimes messy, with difficult conversations and disagreements and growth. But it was built on a foundation of truth, and that made all the difference. Daniel had learned his lesson the hard way, but he had learned it. He sometimes thought about Sarah, wondered how she was doing, hoped she was happy. He would always regret how things had ended between them, would always wonder what might have been if he had just been honest from the start. But he also knew that their brief relationship, however painful its ending, had been necessary for his growth.
She had been his teacher, showing him what really mattered and what didn't. The story of how he pretended to be a poor Uber driver to test his date and how her reaction changed everything became a cautionary tale he sometimes shared with friends who were struggling with similar issues around wealth and relationships. The lesson was simple but profound. You can't build something real on a foundation of lies, no matter how good your intentions are. Trust is fundamental, honesty is essential, and genuine connection requires the courage to be vulnerable and authentic. Daniel had wealth and success, but Sarah had taught him that those things meant nothing without genuine human connection, without someone to share life with who valued him for who he really was. And while his deception had cost him a relationship with Sarah specifically, it had ultimately led him toward becoming the kind of person who could build and maintain a healthy relationship built on truth. Years later, Daniel would still occasionally drive past Sarah's old apartment building or the library where he had waited for her that first night. The memories were bittersweet, filled with both regret and gratitude. Regret for his mistakes and the pain he had caused, gratitude for what she had taught him and how she had changed him for the better. He never tried to contact her again, respecting her boundaries and her new relationship. But he carried the lessons she had taught him into every aspect of his life. Be honest, be brave, value people for who they are, not what they can do for you. Build relationships on trust and transparency. Take the risk of being vulnerable, because that's the only way to find something real. The poor Uber driver persona had been retired permanently, replaced by something better. Daniel's authentic self, complete with all his wealth and all his fears, all his successes and all his insecurities. It was scarier to be that vulnerable, to let people see him completely, but it was also infinitely more rewarding. Sarah had been right about everything in her letter. He didn't need to pretend to be poor to find someone who would value him for the right reasons. He just needed to be patient and discerning, to be honest and open, to give people the chance to prove their character over time. There were good people in the world, people like Sarah, who cared more about who you were than what you had. You just had to be brave enough to let them see the real you. Daniel's relationship with Jennifer continued to grow and deepen, built on that foundation of honesty he had learned to value. They moved in together, talked about marriage, built a life that felt real and meaningful. Daniel still had his wealth and his company, but those things had found their proper place in his life, as tools and resources, not as defining features of his identity or tests for potential partners. And sometimes, when he was driving through the city, not as an Uber driver, but just as himself, Daniel would pass by the places he and Sarah had gone together. The coffee shop where they had their first real date, the street fair where they had eaten her homemade cookies, the library where it had all begun.
And he would feel a complex mix of emotions: sadness for what had been lost, gratitude for what had been learned, and hope for the future he was building. The story didn't have a fairy tale ending where he and Sarah got back together. Real life rarely worked that way. But it had a different kind of ending, one that was perhaps more valuable. The ending where someone learned from their mistakes, grew as a person, and became capable of building the kind of relationship they had always wanted, even if it was with someone else. Sarah had moved on with her life, and so had Daniel. They were both better for having known each other, even if they couldn't be together. She had shown him what genuine character looked like, had held up a mirror to his own flaws and fears, had refused to accept his lies, even when accepting them might have been easier. She had respected herself enough to walk away from someone who had betrayed her trust, and in doing so, she had taught him the most important lesson of all: that real love requires real honesty, and that no amount of chemistry or connection can overcome fundamental deception. Daniel carried that lesson with him every day, in every relationship, in every interaction. He had pretended to be a poor Uber driver to test a date's reaction, and her reaction had indeed changed everything. Not in the way he had hoped or expected, but in a way that ultimately transformed him into a better person. That transformation was painful and costly, but it was also necessary and valuable. And so Daniel moved forward with his life, grateful for hard lessons and second chances, committed to honesty and vulnerability, building a future one genuine connection at a time. The wealthy CEO had learned that money couldn't buy happiness or genuine love, but that honesty and authenticity could create something far more valuable: a life built on truth, with relationships that were real and meaningful and worth more than any amount of wealth. Sarah's final words to him at that charity event echoed in his mind often: be honest, be brave, find someone who's worth your truth. Simple advice, but profound. And Daniel had finally learned to live by it, even if learning that lesson had cost him the relationship with the woman who taught it to him. That was the story of how he pretended to be a poor Uber driver, how his date's genuine kindness and character had shown him exactly what he was looking for, and how his deception in the search for authenticity had taught him that you can't find real connection through fake means. It was a painful lesson, but it was the one he needed to learn. And in the end, that learning, that growth, that transformation into someone capable of real honesty and vulnerability was worth everything it had cost.